the rim. Garnett on the slam. Oh, this is Curry way downtown. Oh, what a shot!
No smooth ad intro today, I just gotta get this out of the way first. Thanks to SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. SeatGeek is the amazing app that provides you with the easiest way to buy tickets for almost any kind of event, which would most likely be sports related for you all. The app pulls tickets from all over the web and has them in one place to make purchasing one for your event really easy, and it also assures you'll be getting the best value for your ticket. While searching for your tickets, each one is ranked with a score from 1 to 100 that lets you know if you're getting a good deal or not for your purchase. On top of that, the app also provides you with the detailed view of what you would see from your seat before you even get there, which is extremely helpful. If you're interested in downloading this app, the links will be in both the comment section and highlighted in the description. If you're still on the fence, consider using my promo code DOM2K to get $20 off your first purchase.
But we also know you three kings came down here to win championships. Not one, championships.
Not two.
LeBron, tell us about that.
Not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7. And when I say that, I really believe it. You know, I'm not just up here blowing smoke and none of these fans, because that's not what I'm about. I'm about business, and we believe we can win multiple championships if we take care of business and do it the right way.
That's the kind of mistake nobody is ever supposed to be able to recover from, yet alone a player aspiring to be the greatest of all time. A lot of people have either forgotten or chosen not to acknowledge it by now, but LeBron joining Wade and Bosh on the Heat was the modern day Kevin Durant move. No, not by circumstance obviously, but by the perception that he was taking the easy way out, which he confirmed himself by the way.
Once the game starts, I mean, it's gonna be easy. I mean, with me and D Wade running the wing, I mean, Pat could come back and play like he was back in his Kentucky days.
Bosh had been a top power forward and player in the game for years, toiling away in Toronto. Meanwhile, Wade had put up a Jordan-esque finals performance in 2006 and probably would have won the 2009 MVP if he was on a winning team. So by joining forces, many people, including the trio themselves, thought this squad to be in contention for the greatest team of all time. It may not seem that way today where we have teams with 5 All-Stars, but back when it happened, this was the pinnacle. In making a move like that, however, LeBron had put his case for GOAT at significant risk. It wasn't just the move itself, it was that he'd also participated in all the hype surrounding it. This coming on the heels of him ditching the Cavaliers on live TV years after promising them a title, this also coming on the heels of mass questioning of the type of player he actually was. Think back to part 2 where we established the beginning of the assassination of his character due to continued failure in the playoffs. Now not only had he quote-unquote quit on Cleveland, but he formed his own super team that he declared worthy of multiple championships before even having stepped on a court. So what did it all mean? Failure had officially become unacceptable. It was one thing to put up MVP performances year after year while carrying a team to a great record only to lose. It was an entirely different thing to join other MVP and superstar level players, throw a party about it, and proclaim victory without even having been to the finals in 3 years. With that declaration and his pursuit of the GOAT title, at the time, he was nearly obligated to win every championship for the remainder of his time in Miami, or he could kiss all the Jordan talk goodbye.
Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. The first title in franchise history. The emotions of Dirk Nowitzki. What he's always dreamed of, hoping to have another chance after the bitter loss in 2006.
Now it's over. 2011 NBA Finals. Dallas steals the title in 6. LeBron James turns in the worst playoff series performance of his career. Jason Terry outplays him. The series is an upset. And now he's 0-2 in the finals. Maybe some of this wouldn't have been such a big deal if it weren't for the way it all happened. After the Yes We Did party, Miami had a fairly turbulent season that had turned out okay up to this point. It was a slow start, as happens frequently when stars play together for the first time, and they could barely ever defeat contending teams if at all. By the playoffs though, they figured it out and cleared a path to the NBA Finals relatively easily. But as is a reoccurring theme in LeBron James' career, that created expectation. You've dominated the Celtics, you've dominated the Bulls who had the MVP, and now your final test is a team nobody even picked to be in the finals at the start of the season. You're up 1-0. You're up by double digits with Game 2 nearing the end, and you're again celebrating like you've already won it. That makes the epic collapse even worse. The continuous inability to stop Jason Terry, the 8-point outing in a crucial game, the turnovers. When you were getting bounced by the Celtics prematurely one final time, we only questioned if you were a choker. Now, this series confirms it. You will never be the greatest of all time. At least that was the public perception 7 years ago when this all went down. And although it sounds like a death blow to his chances to be the greatest, what happened afterwards is what actually makes his case even stronger.
These guys go on stage and talk about they're going to win not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6 championships. No, we're sitting at home like, oh, you think it's that easy, huh? Now, look where you're at right now. You're at the bottom of the barrel again, just like everybody else. I think you guys told him he was Michael Jordan. And what I've been saying all along, the guy's more of a Scottie Pippen, Magic Johnson type guy. He's not a natural-born killer. He's great because he's so physically gifted.
Sometimes as fans, we forget these players are just human. They hear what people say about them, they see the headlines even if they pretend that they don't, and there's a large percentage of the population that would have been absolutely broken and crushed by the criticism LeBron James faced going into his second year in Miami. All in one drama-filled season, he'd gone from the player many were rooting for to take the throne to one of the most hated players in NBA history. But the perception was different this time. Remember, it wasn't necessarily just the public that set the expectations once he made the decision. It was he who told the world that this team would win multiple championships. It was he who said they were so good that Pat Riley could be their point guard. So whereas for the first part of his career he was suffering from his own success on a team that would never have a chance in the end, now he was suffering partly from his own expectations that he'd set, and as it pertains to his case for GOAT, he'd built up a seemingly insurmountable deficit. And that's when the greatest part of his career began.
Turnover, return. James Rodman just intercepted that pass intended for Jackson.
Too bad, too, because that would have been...
High screen, Anthony. LeBron works behind it to put up a wild shot. Oh, please! Unbelievable! Not from this world.
Two very important things happened for his career in 2012. First, he became the clear-cut best player and leader of a team with two other superstars. It was already known that he was the best, but during his first season there, he was reluctant to take full control of Dwayne Wade's team, which is what helped lead them to failure. As it turns out though, proving you could be the best on a team full of great players carries weight. And second, he settled back into his regular persona instead of purposely trying to fit the villain narrative. Once those two things happened, all of his energy could be focused toward capturing his first NBA title, but not before picking up his third MVP award in 4 seasons. By that point, he was pretty well established as the best player in the league. The biggest challenge left would be for him to actually overcome adversity late in the postseason. And despite all he'd done to make that become a reality, for about a week, it looked like we were in a different year with the same story.
Pierce for 3. It's good. Paul Pierce from way downtown. And Boston leads by 4.
Paul Pierce, the dagger, the 3 that he hit in LeBron James' face. It wasn't so much just the shot. It was the way he turned around and ran to the bench. He can't hold me.
Yep.
He can't guard me. He can't do it. He's loving this, loving it, just eating it all up. Wow, it's over. I don't believe they will win Game 6, Skip. Even if they win Game 6 and a miracle happen, and I think it's got to a point where it'd be a miracle if they win this series. They're certainly not winning an NBA World Championship. Not only is this series over, everything's over for Miami. I think they lose Thursday night in Boston. I think after that, we don't know if Eric Spoelstra will be back. I think after that, we don't know if the big 3 will be together. And I hope that they live the entire offseason wondering what on earth is going to happen. I hope they are upset. I hope they are uncomfortable. I hope they are stressed. I hope they are embarrassed. I hope everything, because they have flagrantly failed to live up to expectations.
This moment is, simply put, one of the most important shots of LeBron's career, and it wasn't even his shot. Symbolic in many ways, for a good 48 hours, this was seen as the shot to sink LeBron's case for GOAT. Not to overvalue one moment or be dramatic, but here's the breakdown. After years of losing in Cleveland and falling short of expectations, he was eventually granted a pass for most of it due to simple logic. But at that time, the Cleveland years coupled with the 2011 finals were making the whole quote-unquote chosen one thing seem like more of a fallacy. And then there was this shot. After all those years of losing to the Celtics, after prematurely claiming multiple titles at a party, with one shot, he was again down in a series to the Celtics and going back to Boston for a third elimination game in 5 seasons at the Garden. Forget that Chris Bosh had been injured since round 2. Nobody cared about that, and he knew it. The Celtics were an average team at best throughout 2012, they suffered many injuries and were missing at least 3 crucial rotation players for this series alone. At that point, his career was at a crossroad. Nobody was paying attention to the fact that he quote-unquote didn't have help for his first 7 years. The Miami loss was with help, and it was time for him to either keep failing and accept that he'd always be at least one wrong too short of the greatest, or to truly be the chosen one. So for lack of a better way to put it, the Garden wasn't just a garden or even a jungle for Game 6, it was the Lion's Den. And it would, without a doubt, define the next phase of LeBron James's career.
Sure, Doc Rivers doesn't want him to hesitate then. James, meanwhile, he is done with that. Pearson throws it down, and the Heat quickly with a particular. Oh, James comes flying in and throws it down.
The fact that it's difficult to determine the best game of LeBron's career says so much. Was it Game 6 in Detroit? Was it right here where he all but saved his legacy and case for GOAT? Debatable, but there is zero conversation to be had about the most important game of his career. Losing here and not even getting back to the finals after what happened against Dallas would have destroyed him and any chance he had of being the GOAT. Not to mention the fact that Miami may have had a reason to blow it up right then and there. Damn all the talk about the championships and how much they count or don't count. This conversation was about nothing more than overcoming adversity all the other greats had to go through, and a loss here would have just proved that he didn't have what the others did. He didn't have the Jordan in him to come up big on both sides of the floor in a clutch moment. He didn't have that Kobe in him to take the situation into his own hands, win or lose. A couple of decades earlier, a game of this magnitude had caused Scottie Pippen to suffer migraines and all but abandon Jordan in the most important game of the series. That, among many other things, of course, is why Pippen is nowhere near the greatest of all time conversation. But on that night in Boston, with more pressure than he'd ever have on himself at any other point in his career, he proved that he had it, and no one has been able to deny it ever since. That was the official end to LeBron's rivalry with the Big Three, and it was one less demon he had to conquer. What had been one of the biggest hurdles of his career would never stand in his way again, and it truly showed in his confidence through every big game or series he participated in after this. It was like instead of just knowing that he could do his part and put up huge numbers, he now also knew he had the ability to climb the mountain no matter how tall it was, and what he learned and applied from that night saved his case to be the greatest of all time for many years to come. So when it came time for him to claim his first title, Goliath had already been conquered in all honesty. Yeah, there was a job to be finished in OKC, but overcoming that amount of adversity in Boston was the last thing he needed to complete himself as a player. And for that reason, although the 5-game Thunder series was closer than it appears now, they never truly stood a chance. That series was over from the moment he collected the Celtics' soul in Game 6. And with that confidence, combined with the fact that he'd made Miami his team along with no longer trying to fit the villain role, the long chase to that elusive NBA title was over. Complete freedom. That's the only way to describe what was witnessed from LeBron in 2013. No more pressure to win his first title, no more pressure to live up to expectations that hadn't been met, no more pressure to put the Celtics away. For the first time in his career, we witnessed LeBron James truly unleashed. Not only was he probably at his peak athletically, but from a statistical standpoint, it'd be difficult to argue there was ever a better LeBron than in 2013. Hell, it'd be hard to argue that there was even a better season than LeBron's in 2013. His stat line was 26.8 points, 8 rebounds, 7.3 assists, and 56.5 field goal percentage. No other player in history has ever averaged those stats on 55% shooting or higher. He was finally a major, consistent threat from behind the arc, shooting a scorching 40.6% from that distance, which still remains the best of his career. From the first time he made the finals back in 2007, the one shot you would have always lived with him taking was a 3 because it was considered a bailout compared to his other abilities. That was true no more. His player efficiency rating of 31.6 was the best in the league and is still the 7th highest PER rating of all time. It was also his 6th straight year of leading the league in PER. He played elite defense on top of all of this, where many believed he was actually robbed of a Defensive Player of the Year award. He was the catalyst in leading Miami to the second longest single-season win streak of all time at 27 games. He had a streak of 6 straight games where he was scoring 30 points on 60% field goal shooting. This was during the month of February as the playoffs began to close in, and it's safe to say that he all but locked up his 4th MVP award around that time, as he became the first player since Kareem to shoot 64% on more than 200 field goal attempts in over a month. Hint: Kareem was a 7-foot center. That's not normal for ball handling players. All of this culminated to him following a single first place vote shy of winning the first unanimous MVP award in NBA history. Why? Because one voter felt the Knicks wouldn't have made the playoffs without Carmelo Anthony. See how stupid that stand logic is people use today? It cost LeBron that year. But it didn't even matter. When it was all said and done, most people agreed we'd never seen anything like 2013, and it wasn't just statistically either. And for the most part, it didn't look like he was going all out most of the time. Yet athletically, defensively, offensively, and efficiently, there was simply nothing like it. Miami won 66 games, but after dominating the first 2 rounds, they surprisingly almost lost to the Pacers in the conference finals. Well, almost is a poor choice of words. It was a 7-game series against the best defensive team in the league, but Game 7 was never even close. LeBron dominated as he usually does in elimination games and held Paul George to 7 points on 2 of 9 shooting as the Heat cruised to the finals where a pleasant surprise awaited them. LeBron wasn't prepared for 2007 and his team was even less prepared. After the series, Tim Duncan told him that the league would one day be his, and with the events of the 2013 season, that day had clearly come. But the Spurs were still as stoic and fundamentally sound as they were 6 seasons earlier, and they had no intentions of being intimidated by LeBron's historic season or his historically talented team. This series would present yet another test for LeBron to pass, and just like he'd conquered the Celtics demon, he'd have to do the same here to continue to add to his case.
Dribbling, Parker with 2 to shoot. Just gets it off in time, and he banks it in! What a shot from Parker! Blocked by Bosch, almost close to a goaltend. Green. Danny Green! An NBA Finals record 15 3-pointers for the Spurs.
After 5 games that were mostly blowouts, the Heat found themselves on the wrong side of a 3-2 series split. And although it was a bit less dramatic, LeBron would have to overcome something similar to the Boston situation. He'd won his championships already, he was coming off of his best season, but this is the GOAT talk and he's still in it. Despite what ring deniers say today, you need more than one championship to be taken seriously here. In LeBron's case, he was no longer on the super hot seat he was on after 2011, but he was still on the hot seat. He didn't promise Miami one championship, he promised them multiple. Yet, as Game 6 was winding down, some of that feeling that we've been sold a fallacy began to return. The Spurs were in complete control of that game from the tip, and despite LeBron having proved himself in Boston a year earlier, following it up by what was potentially the greatest regular season ever, he was again about to fail in the face of adversity, and all the prior talk from the first phase of his career was creeping back in. I'm sure you know the drill by now though, another all-time performance. With Wade on the bench to start the 4th quarter, LeBron dropped in 16 timely points to bring the Heat back within striking distance, and this leads up to one of the most hotly contested debates about LeBron's status as the greatest of all time. In the final minute of Game 6, with the Heat trailing, everything LeBron had done that season had seemingly been erased when he turned the ball over twice. 2 turnovers in the final minute of a championship elimination game, one of many championships that he'd claimed that night in 2010 by the way. It's a forgotten moment by many because of what happened next, but it's significant enough that had the Heat had lost the game and gone 1-3 in the finals, he would have been in the same place he started back after the 2011 finals, or at least somewhere near it. If Ray Allen had have missed the game tying 3, the only thing that would have been remembered about Game 6 from LeBron would have been his missed 3 right before that and the 2 turnovers. That's why the narrative that Allen saved him exists. And without Allen's 3, he would have probably been X'd out of most GOAT conversations. Fortunately, we know that didn't happen. They survived Game 6, which could also be argued as one of the most pressured or important games of his career, and he went on to post yet another legendary Game 7 performance as the Heat claimed their 2nd title in 3 years. And so, the league had finally, undisputedly belonged to LeBron. He'd now conquered both the Celtics and the Spurs in the most pressured situations possible. He'd claimed 2 titles, 2 finals MVPs, 4 MVPs, and there hadn't been an argument for anybody in the league being better than him for at least 2 years. But notice something. At the end of Game 7, his championship celebration was a bit subdued. Or maybe he was just exhausted, but we're gonna go with subdued since we saw a certain reaction from him years later after exhaustion. There was no crying, no mass hysteria or excitement. There was none of the shock you'd expect after a nail-biting Game 7. It's only a theory, but I think it's because deep down he knew there was another chapter he had to write in his case for GOAT. All of these accolades and stats and championships in Miami, they were never going to be enough to draw his bigger picture or to tell his story. There was still just one more thing left on the table. He just needed the perfect situation to go for it. That chance came a year later when the Spurs absolutely obliterated Miami in the finals for their revenge. It's been attested to by Heat players that 2014 just wasn't the same. The motivation wasn't the same, the team wasn't as excited, and in a way you could say they suffered a bit from their own success. But also, with Wade's knees breaking down, it was clear to a certain someone that winning any more titles there was going to be even more of a challenge. Don't get it wrong though, Pat Riley could have easily retooled that roster to compete for years to come. But that wasn't the point. 4 or 5, how many ever championships? The same way those come with a note attached for Kevin Durant today, LeBron had a note attached to his that read, "I promise," referring to a time in his younger days where he swore he wouldn't rest until he brought a title back to Cleveland. That's right up there on the list of expectations that he'd set himself. So maybe he could have won 4 or 6 titles in Miami. Maybe Pat Riley would have provided more competent management than Cleveland ever could. But after all that he'd been through, after everything he'd achieved with the Heat, nothing would ever change that one goal in Cleveland would be the most important thing he would ever accomplish in his case to be the greatest of all time.